service. Today, he dedicates his time and effort to the support of American service personnel, their families, and military veterans. Wayne is the founder of the Warriors Watch Riders, a national support troop organization, as well as 5 other troops and veteran support groups. The Warriors Watch Riders is a national coalition of troop support groups dedicated to the support of our nation's warriors and their families, both past and present. Warriors Watch Groups provides motorcycle escorts for both military units and individuals during both deployment and their return home. Wayne also speaks on veterans' issues and rights for several different veteran and biker publications. And let me tell you, Wayne and his group is where the rubber meets the road. I had the personal distinction of witnessing what they did when one of our own fallen, Bobby Dombrowski, came home. In the most horrific weather you could imagine, Wayne and his group stood guard over the body of our fallen brother. Thank you, Wayne.
I had an experience 2 days ago that, when I got home afterwards, caused me to take out the speech that I've been working on for 2 weeks. The speech that I was going to deliver here today, and to tear it up. It's not that there was anything wrong with it necessarily, it's just that when I compared what I had written to the powerful experience I had had that day, the words fell flat. The speech had interesting statistics and it had historical anecdotes. It was filled with banalities and trite expressions of why Memorial Day is important, how it's more than just the beginning of summer and backyard cookouts. But it was missing the point, and I could not get to the heart of what it was that I wanted to say. Then on Saturday, just 2 days ago, I attended a Warriors Watch Welcome Home event for a young Marine. I founded the Warriors Watch 3 years ago this month. And since that time, we've done more than 2,000 such welcomes nationally. Welcomes for individual warriors coming home, or for entire units. We do both with equal enthusiasm and excitement. And if I can divert from my remarks for a moment, many of the men and women who do that are standing behind you wearing red shirts, holding flags right now. And God bless it, you have every right to be very, very proud of yourselves. They're the ones who came in so inconspicuously this morning. Like me, I like to remain under the radar. The Marine's name that we welcomed home is Lance Corporal Patrick Smith. He was coming home from his first deployment to Afghanistan. It was also his birthday. Patrick had just turned 20. We met him at the airport and escorted him to his home in Northeast Philadelphia with 60 motorcycles, several cars, and Philadelphia traffic police vehicles. When we reached his home, there were another 100 or more people there, cheering and waving flags and homemade signs of welcome, and a huge banner hung from the top floor of his Northeast Philly red brick row house. Patrick stood on his front lawn surrounded by all of us, his family, his friends and neighbors, and with a few impromptu words, that shy and humble young Marine got directly to the heart of what it was that I had been struggling for 2 weeks to write. What Memorial Day is really all about. It's about keeping faith. Patrick said essentially that he was overwhelmed by the show of support, which he understood was not just for him alone, but by extension for all of our troops and for their mission. In essence, he was thanking us. We who had gone there to thank him for his service, to thank his family for their sacrifice. He was thanking us for keeping faith with him and with his comrades while he served. But then he said something that actually choked me up. And remember, I've done hundreds of welcomes just like that one. I've stood at just over 100 military funerals in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. Patrick said that he was honored by our support, but then he said, especially you Vietnam vets, what we do is nothing compared to what you went through. Now that may or may not be true. It probably depends on your experience and your perspective. But it struck me not because of its truth or untruth, but because it was so gracious. It was so typical of this generation of American warriors. A generation of warriors of the most noble character I have ever seen. That simple statement, quietly spoken by a 20-year-old Lance Corporal, hit me like an emotional punch to the gut. He was keeping faith with us, the veterans of past wars. A couple of weeks ago, I was privileged to speak to a group of 250 soldiers and their families. They were reservists, recently returned from Afghanistan. They were attending an Army program intended to reintegrate them into civilian life. I spoke to them for 20 minutes about keeping faith. I told them that we who were left behind have kept faith with them while they were in harm's way. I spoke of their faith in their country, faith in their fellow soldiers, and faith in the veterans who have gone before, as well as those soldiers who are yet to come. I spoke to them of faith in freedom itself. And they were riveted because they know the price of freedom. They just paid it. I challenged them to take the full measure of devotion of what we, the veterans of past wars, were showing to them today, and to pay it forward 40 years from now, when their knees hurt and their backs are out and their hair is gray if they have any. And being the young American soldiers of character that they are, they understood. I spoke of the bond that we as soldiers and veterans have between us. It's a bond made from the American love of freedom. A love so deep and so pure that we are willing to fight and die for it, even for the freedom of other people. Our freedom is as fragile as it is precious. Our freedom is a gift given to us by those who went before us. Our freedom comes at a terrible price. It was purchased with the blood of patriots. It was secured through sacrifice and suffering, and it was passed on to us by our fathers in the hopes that we would understand the terrible cost that we are here today to honor, and that we would not squander it. John Adams was speaking directly to you and me, and he was speaking for all of those whose blood soaked this soil when he said, "Posterity, you will never know what it costs the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it." But we, his descendants, do know the cost. People like Lance Corporal Patrick Smith and those 250 soldiers know the cost. They know it because they have so recently paid it. Each generation of Americans has been called upon to pay that cost again. And future generations will yet learn firsthand the cost of freedom. Freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit. Ronald Reagan said that. He also said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in America when men were free. So we, yesterday's soldiers, keep faith with the soldiers of today. And we challenge them to keep faith with the generation of soldiers to come after them, because we know that they too will be called upon to pay the price, and that they will have their own wars to fight. And we know that not because Americans love war, but because Americans love freedom. The voices of long-dead patriots and heroes call out to us from the grave to keep faith with them, that we not forget the cost of freedom, that we not forget what terrible price they paid. John McCrae wrote the greatest war poem ever written in the trenches of World War I, the war to end all wars, in Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. We loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. We will never break faith with the veterans of the past. We will never break faith with those who fight and die today. We will never break faith with those veterans yet to come. We will never break faith with the dead, those who died so young to preserve our freedom. We will never break the faith. So help us, God. Thank you.